Good morning. We're very honored today to have Mr. John Hersey become part of our school for this long weekend. Other schools across the country may have namesakes who visit, but I guarantee you that none of these schools has a person who cares so much about his school. And Mr. Hersey is quoted in the Herald this morning as saying, "I consider having my name on this institution one of the greatest honors I've had in my life." He arrived early yesterday morning, had breakfast with a number of our seniors and some of the staff, participated in our graduation ceremony yesterday with a message for our seniors, and then attended a reception to meet members of the community. He gives himself to our school and to our community. This is his 5th trip to our building. So he has touched, for at least a brief moment, nearly all the students who have attended John Hersey High School in its 19-year history. And if you speak to these students, you will know that his visits are a very, very important memory. Mr. Hersey is an outstanding author. His first novel, Belle Ferragamo, won him the Pulitzer Prize. His book, Hiroshima, gave the world a human look at the devastation caused by a nuclear explosion. A number of Mr. Hersey's other novels grace our library. He was a member of the faculty of Yale University, retiring in 1985. He continues to write, and he continues to speak out on those issues he feels that are important to mankind. And he continues to have a deep interest in our school, and most particularly in you the students who attend his school. Please give a real John Hersey High School welcome to Mr. John Hersey.
I do feel indeed to be part of this school. In fact, I've been part of this school, I hate to say it, since before you were born. I came here when the school was dedicated and hadn't all been built yet. I was shown the classrooms that were, most of the classrooms were already built. Some of the extra facilities hadn't been finished yet. And I've come back several times and been so proud and so happy to see the way the school has grown, not just in terms of its physical facilities, but in terms of the spirit that it shows. I thought this morning that instead of talking at you about things that I'm interested in, I'd like to try to respond to some questions that some of you may have about things that you may be interested in. So, without any more ado, if there are any who would like to put some questions to me, I'd like to take a shot at answering them.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to ask you 2 questions. Do you think the increasing nationalistic sentiments expressed in movies such as Rambo and Rocky IV are a detriment to peace or simply crimes and entertainment?
Would you like to do the other question too now? Or?
Sure. Do you feel that anything has been accomplished in recent disarmament talks, or do you think that they were just set up to say to the rest of the world that the Soviet Union and the United States are trying to have peace and keep peace?
Those are 2 really tough and really important questions. I've been spooked by recent movies that have come along. I'm really troubled by the violence and the kind of heroism that seems to be given to people who shoot guns. I see that the world needs police and needs some kind of security, but I worry about how much you and other young people are being encouraged to think that the only important thing for American spirit is one that stands behind the trigger. I think that peace in our time is the most important issue that we can have. I care, as Mr. O'Driscoll said, about you, and I think of your future as being one that can only be happy if we can find a way of living with other peoples on this earth without resorting to Rambo. Now, on the second question about how things are going on, trying to reach some agreement about all these things, I've also been very disturbed by the tone of the administration's dealings with the Soviet Union. I think that the thing that troubles me is that our belligerence in dealing with them has led our friends in Europe to think that the Soviet Union wants peace more than we do. I don't think that's true. I think the American people want peace more than anything. But somehow the tone of the negotiation so far has been one that's led the impression that we are more interested in proceeding with plans for new weapons than we are in plans for getting rid of weapons. I'm sure there'll be more questions along these lines, and I'd like to go into some of this more deeply a little with you. But let's try another question or two and see where we go.
Good morning, my name is Rich Olson, and I'd like to ask you if you are currently writing another book.
I am. Writing is habit forming. In fact, it's addictive. There aren't any serious side effects from the addiction that I know of, but it's something that I'm stuck with. I retired from teaching a couple of years ago because I reached a certain golden age, but I don't retire from writing. I'm working now on a book about a fish. It's a fish I've been trying to catch because I like to eat it for 20 years now. It's called the bluefish. I go out on the boat in the afternoons on Vineyard Sound near Martha's Vineyard, where I live off the Massachusetts coast. And I got to know this fish pretty well now. He's one of the most vicious fish in the sea. It's been described that the bluefish travels in packs like wolves, destroying hundreds of millions of fish in the sea. They are they can't turn off their instinct for feeding. When their stomachs are full, they'll still go after other fish. I've caught fish on big lures and then opened up their stomachs and found that they couldn't possibly have swallowed another thing. Anyhow, this is a fish I've become acquainted with. I'd say it's vicious, but I admire that fish. I've learned it has a wonderful kind of life, and I've tried to write a book about the sea it lives in, the way it lives, and how it survives. Basically, what I think I'm trying to do in this book is to establish a relationship between human beings and other creatures on this earth. The bluefish lives on certain kinds of bait fish. They're called silversides and menhaden and other things. Silversides and menhaden live on plankton. They're tiny, mostly invisible creatures that live in the sea, animals. And the tiny plankton live on other plant plankton in the sea, single-cell plants. A 5-pound bluefish eats 500 pounds of menhaden and silversides during its lifetime. But those silversides need 5,000 pounds of the tiny microscopic animal plankton to live on. And those need 5,000 pounds of plant plankton to live on. If you break this chain anywhere, there's a disaster for all of that life. And we consider ourselves to be at the upper end of the chain. We eat the fish when it gets to the table. But if any place along the line, by our carelessness in the sea, by the effluence from factories, by dumping in the ocean, as we've been doing for years, we kill the plant plankton, everything up the chain dies, and we suffer. So what I'm trying to write about is the relationship between human beings and the rest of the world we live in. We've got to think about those things if we want to survive. So it's not just guns that we have to think about, it's carelessness for the world we live in. Another question?
My name is Brian Adams. Do you think that the United States would have been able to win World War II without the atom bomb?
I do. I think that the Japanese were on the point of surrender. And one of the tragedies of that last year of the war was that the signals that the Japanese were giving that they were ready to surrender were not heard as clearly as they should have been by the Allies. One unfortunate thing is the Japanese put out feelers through the Russians toward the end, and we were not willing to listen to what we were getting from them. There was a lot of discussion after the bomb was dropped, a little bit before, about whether it wouldn't have been better to drop it on a desert island somewhere, demonstrate to the Japanese that we had this terrible weapon, and then consider the probability that they would have surrendered. But one of the ironic paradoxes is that the dropping of the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki gave us a picture of what happens that we might not have had otherwise. And I think that one reason we're safe so far still is that we had those demonstrations. This is heavy stuff that we've gone in for so far, and I don't want to give you the opinion that I see nothing but disaster in this world. I see you, I see hopes, I see lots of possibilities that are not nearly as gloomy as I seem to be sounding about how things go. We have another question. The trend in America in the last 20 years, 25 years, has been more and more for people to think about themselves. Getting ahead, making it, has been the key to the American credo for young people. I'm all for it. We have a society in which it's possible for people to get ahead. It's possible for people who have nothing to find means of having something. I was very poor when I was young. When I went away to school, at first I had only one pair of pants. And every night I used to put them under the mattress so they wouldn't baggie, and I wore them the next day. And now I live a decent life. I've been able to make my way. This is a wonderful thing in our country. But I think the culture now has encouraged so much people to think about themselves and getting ahead that they stop thinking about everyone else around them. This, I think, carries over into our national policy, our regard for much of it goes through the Senate and Congress. And so my hope for you would be that you look at the person next to you always and think about your friends, think about your family, think about others, and work for them as much as for yourselves. That, I think, will give you as much pleasure as getting ahead in material terms can ever do. I think we have time for another question, and maybe some right from anywhere. Anybody? Don't be bashful. Yes.
Well, I regret I only have one question for you. Do you in any way approve of the statue in the courtyard, and what was the reason for its purchase?
I guess the first thing I have to say is that I didn't pose for it. Are you trying to censor that piece of art? I'm against censorship. Deal with it as you will. Be angry at it. But don't melt it down or chop it to pieces. It's there. And it's... I don't know whether it's art. Everybody makes his own judgment about that. But don't censor it.
You've asked a little lighter question. The students have kept me busy with politics and nuclear arms, etc. But Hersey High School, in all the 19, 18 years that I've been here, has been very, very successful, as you see around in athletics, music, band, the drama, and the fine arts areas. I just like to speak to the audience on the importance of that in African high school.
Yes. This bears on what I was saying about making it. I think that one aspect of having a fulfilled life is to have some other things you're interested in besides what taxes you're going to pay and what income you're going to have. Fishing is a great joy of my life. I used to play the violin very seriously. Music is a great joy of my life. And I think that each of you can find the things that will give you pleasure that are beyond just making it. The question about the statue raises the question about whether some of you may want to be artists, even on the side. I think that hobbies and other interests enrich your life in ways that the striving never can.
Can I ask a repeat question from yesterday morning? If our students have some free time over the summer and they want to get to know you better and read some of your works, where would you recommend they begin?
I said yesterday that my choice would be to start with something very short. It's summer, after all. And maybe Belford Dono would give some pleasure. There's a book, for those of you who care about Rambo, called Into the Valley, about the fighting on Guadalcanal in the Second World War. It may give you some thoughts, too, about other aspects of fighting. The other day, I went to a college graduation, and the speaker spoke much too long, and at a point in the speech, the audience heard him say, "and finally," and they broke out clapping. So I'll say, "and finally." Thank you very much for listening, for letting me come to see you again. I hope to come back another time.
As a memento of his visit in your first hour class tomorrow, an autographed picture of Mr. Hersey will be given each hour. And now, going to return to your third hour class.